Yana and Emmett by Michael Bainbrook. On the morning of her 21st birthday, like most every morning, Yana Baragoy woke in darkness. Trying not to disturb her slumbering roommate, she dressed in her running clothes, gathered her soft blonde hair into a ponytail, slid a piece of bread and cheese into a fanny pack, and left her dorm. Outside, the sky was overcast and the campus buildings were the color of iron, like the hulls of old Soviet tanks. Though she sometimes wondered why, Yana had stubbornly maintained her athletic conditioning. With toned calves and firm shoulders, she resembled the women she'd idolized growing up, athletes who had gone on to represent their countries in the Olympics. But Yana knew that staying in shape wouldn't be easy for her, now that she was no longer competing. And when she was honest with herself, she confessed that she had a tendency to gain a little weight if she wasn't careful. She used to run every day, like clockwork. But lately, school and her job had made it all but impossible to stick to a routine, and she was lucky if she could get in 3 runs a week. Yana stretched briefly, then broke into a lively jog. At Valier Park, she did 3 laps around a small lake, offering a loose wave to other runners she'd come to recognize over the years. From there, she crossed over to Yui Dumbarvii Boulevard, cut through the Jewish cemetery, and turned at the Nativity Cathedral. An hour later, she ended with a 100-meter sprint. Red-faced and breathing heavily, Yana came to a stop behind a high school. Seated on the grass was a young girl with her leg pinned back, stretching her hamstring. 16 and lanky, with dark hair and a complexion that was constantly under attack from the latest acne outbreak, Claudia stood and favored Yana with a wide grin. Her smile revealed teeth badly in need of braces, which Yana knew her family would never be able to afford. While Yana removed a stopwatch from her fanny pack and set it to 0, Claudia stepped up to the white line. On Yana's mark, the girl exploded down the track. She steered through turn 1, then increased her speed, attacking the backstretch. Yana watched her, paying close attention to her stride and posture. "Relax your arms," Yana yelled from across the field. Pink shoes and a floppy brown ponytail seemed to work in unison. On her face, a mixture of agony, determination, and joy, something only a runner would understand. As Claudia rounded the last turn, Yana encouraged her. "Go, go. Push it." In a blur, Claudia crossed the white line before coasting to a stop. With her hands perched on her hips, she turned and walked back to Yana, who had taken a seat on a bench. "Nice finish," Yana said. "You're looking strong." "I felt strong on that one." Claudia reached down and snatched a plastic water bottle from the grass, squeezing a stream into her mouth. "How's your weight?" Yana asked her. 121. "Mine?" Yana grunted and let the stopwatch dangle from her neck. "Don't ask." Claudia offered her a shocked expression. "You look great, coach." While the early morning sun broke over the top of the city, Yana brought a hand to her belly and shrugged. She'd been coaching at the high school for almost 2 years on a volunteer basis. She hoped that after graduation from college, she would be offered a permanent position with salary. Claudia was her most promising and dedicated young athlete. They met every day after school with the rest of the girls' track team, and then individually 3 times a week in the mornings to work on the little things that make a good runner a champion. Claudia's best event was the 800-meter, and she held the unofficial record in her class in Moldova, as well the Ukraine and Bulgaria. So the next indoor competition is in Budapest in 10 weeks. Registration is at the Marriott Hotel. Yana paused to write Claudia's time and the date in a notebook she kept to record her progress. "Have you talked to your parents about it?" "I did," Claudia said, "but they say they don't have the money." "Do they understand how critical this meet is?" "I told them." Yana paused while she noticed tiny beads of sweat on Claudia's brow and around her eyes. "This is your ticket to Greece, you know." "I know, coach, but..." "No buts. Can they help you at all?" "Maybe a little." Claudia took another shot of water and then asked, "Did you talk to the school?" "Yes, but they declined to help us," Yana said, putting out a hand for Claudia's water bottle. "What are we gonna do, coach?" Yana squirted a stream of water into her mouth and then tossed the bottle back to Claudia. The girl had a gift. She was a dreamy combination of heart and athleticism, and best of all, she was dedicated to her sport. Claudia didn't date or even go out much, and over the last year, she had all but disconnected from her friends, which Yana knew made her easier to train. She was just the kind of daughter Yana could see herself having someday. But they had no budget, and were always out of money, except for what Yana could scrape together after paying her bills. Eventually, Claudia would compete against runners who spent more in a week than she did in an entire year, and the disadvantage worried Yana. "We'll figure something out," Yana said. Claudia smiled, but her freckles didn't quite reach her dark eyes. Then she knelt down, loosened the lace of her left shoe, and rearranged the tongue. "So, how's school, coach?" "Not bad. But physics is killing me. I know a guy who's great at math. And he's really cute." Yana shot Claudia a look that said she should mind her own business in that department. Then she favored her with her best Yoda impression. "Funny girl you are. Must not in coach's life pry." Claudia laughed while Yana suddenly stood. "Oh my gosh, I've got to go or I'll be late. I thought you didn't have class until 10:30. "I don't, but I have a meeting with the dean at 9. I petitioned the university to help with your training expenses. I'm sure he just wants to talk to me about it." "Cool." Yana bunched her shoulders in a shrug. "We'll see how cool it is." 2 more runs then hit the showers, she added as she started trotting to the bus stop. "Okay, coach." Claudia positioned her toe at the white line. Suddenly, she turned and cupped her hands at her mouth. "Oh, and happy birthday, by the way."
It was the craziest thing to ever come out of Brad's mouth, and that was saying something. "We'll draw for it," Brad said. "Draw for what?" "The farm, winner take all." And Brad was supposed to be the smart one. Not long ago, Emmett Blackburn had walked slowly back to his truck. Exhausted, he laid his tools on the bed, took a long drink from a water jug, and raised the tailgate. It was the end of August, and night was coming earlier now. Summer had passed in a blink. Before climbing into the cab, Emmett wiped his brow, pausing to gaze out over his crops. That was what mattered to him most, his land more than 500 acres. It wasn't the largest spread around, but it was his, and the dirt of it ran in his veins like rich, plentiful blood. He hit the gas, spinning his tires. Dirty hands gripped the wheel of his '84 Chevy Silverado, and his features glowed orange from the controls on his dash. At AT in the road, he turned left onto Old Highway 89, a 2-lane road with pastures on both sides that sliced through rural Utah like a crack in a cement driveway. Soon, he parked at a white, 2-story farmhouse where he'd lived all his life. Black shutters and a wide wraparound porch dominated its appearance. His grandfather built the house after emigrating from Denmark in 1921. It was where his father grew up too, and it was where his parents were married. As Emmett rounded the corner, he saw a light burning in the kitchen. Brad was still up. Damn. Brad was 4 years older than Emmett's 22. He'd left Potter's Pond 6 years ago for college, and had grown a first-rate pot belly from lounging around the classroom all day. He got a bachelor's degree from the University of Utah, then went on to Arizona State for his MBA, but he never finished. To tell the truth, Emmett hadn't been at all sad to see Brad fail at something. He'd lived most of his life in the shadow of Brad's academic accomplishments. He was aware of it and sick of it. Brad got married a few years ago and had 2 kids, with one on the way. On top of that, his wife, Charlie, had 2 kids from a previous marriage. A few months ago, Brad surprised everyone by moving his family back to Potter's Pond and into the old farmhouse, and they were driving Emmett crazy. In the kitchen, Emmett went straight to the cupboard and got down a bowl, pouring himself a bowl of Cocoa Puffs. He took a seat at the kitchen table across from Brad, who sat quietly, a Wall Street Journal in front of his big, fat face. Without skipping a beat, their conversation picked up right where they'd left it that morning, with Brad trying to boss Emmett around and Emmett trying to keep his temper. "Why'd you come back anyway?" Emmett said, setting his hat on the table. "You're not a farmer." "I grew up here, Emmett," Brad said. "I think that counts for something." "That doesn't mean jack squat around here." Brad's eyes appeared to go hot before cooling again. "And Charlie likes it too." "Charlie?" "Yeah. She says it's a good place to raise kids." Emmett hunched over his bowl, spooning in several bites of the chocolatey goodness. They'd never gotten along. How were they supposed to work the farm together? "I get it," Emmett said, somehow finding a pleasant tone. "You like living here. But there's got to be something else you can do." "Like what?" "This isn't Salt Lake, you know. Open a paintball field or do people's taxes." Brad laughed and shook his head, as though Emmett had no idea what it took to make it in the world of business these days. "The motel's for sale." "I'm not buying that dump," Brad snapped. "Get it cheap and I'll help you fix it up." "Then you can get the hell out of my house," he didn't say. Brad folded the paper twice and placed it on the table. He dropped his hands to his lap and looked serious for a moment. "Emmett, I'm the oldest. And now that Dad's gone, I have a responsibility to do what's best for the farm. What's best for the farm is if you let me deal with it, like Dad did." "I can't do that." "Why not?" "Because I have a stake in this place too." "The will, remember?" Emmett leaned back. He knew exactly what the will said. Several years ago, their father had hastily penned something that split the farm equally between the 2 boys. Emmett had been meaning to talk to him about it, but no one counted on their father keeling over at 57. Now Brad was treating Emmett like some lackey cowhand instead of the guy who'd been running the place for the better part of a decade. Brad continued. "We're 50-50 on this thing. Then you work your half and I'll work mine. The farm's too small to be worked separately." Brad was right. Farms that size were often plowed under by larger agricultural conglomerates. He'd even seen it happen in Potter's Pond, something they called economies of scale. It was an educated word, a Brad word. That's when Brad announced his plan. 4 short words. A phrase. "We draw for it." Hearing Brad's idea, Emmett got up and went to the sink. This was why he'd never trusted his brother. Brad was always crossing into Crazy Town for the weekend. While Emmett tried to find his center, Brad went on. "It's simple and fair. That way the farm will have a chance to survive." "Draw what?" Emmett asked, trying to hide the fact he'd been caught off guard by Brad's aggressiveness. "Short stick. Out of a hat. High card. Whatever, it can be your choice." "Yeah, and if I lose, I'll have nothing." "I have a plan for that too." There's a surprise, Emmett thought. The wheels in Brad's head were always turning. Brad explained that by using the farm as collateral, the winner would borrow $500,000 to give it to the loser. They own the farm free and clear, so a loan should be no problem. Probably get a great interest rate too. With that kind of money, the loser could do just about anything they wanted. Emmett dropped his shoulders. "Look man, this farm is all I got. I can't lose it." "Half." "What?" "You have half a farm." Emmett sighed in understanding. To be honest, the thought of sending Brad back to college did soothe Emmett's seared nerves. But as always, Brad knew just which of Emmett's buttons to push. If he lost, he'd never be able to get back into farming. $500,000 wouldn't buy much in the way of land and equipment, and he'd worked his own place too long to work for someone else. But if he won, he'd be set. He'd marry Mindy, and they wouldn't have to worry about buying Brad out of his share of the farm, other than the $500K. Mindy was a farmer's daughter. She'd definitely understand the need to have it all. It was a gamble, he admitted, but it might be a gamble worth taking. Well, Brad pressed. What do you think? Emmett pushed himself away from the sink. After grabbing his hat off the chair, he walked toward the stairs, and without looking at Brad, said, I think you're crazy, but I'll let you know.